What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about why I'm getting Ghost of Yotei. This is a video series I do where I talk about upcoming games, and I talk about whether I'm getting it, not getting it, or am somewhere in between. And look, Ghost has gone back and forth for me personally with probably Silent Hill F, and I think at the time this video goes up, Silent Hill F is still not out. They kind of wrestle for the game of the fall. And there's room for other games to kind of swoop in and steal that. Like Hollow Knight, came out, and it came out actually earlier than I thought it was going to. But look, we've talked so much about Ghost of Yotei, and my excitement does get higher and higher for this game. A lot of it stems from me going back and replaying, and I've put a lot of hours into Ghost of Tsushima. Back in the day, I think my save said 90 and a half hours of playtime, and that's Legends, that's Platinum in Ghost of Tsushima back in the day. I'm glad I did it, and I don't want to make this like entirely about Ghost of Tsushima when we're talking about Yotei, but I'll tell you this, like, it is a special game. It's a very special game. And when I see Ghost of Yotei, you see so much of Tsushima, right? Like a lot of these second PlayStation games, they can look very like similar, but then you say, well, okay, well, is more necessarily a bad thing? And then you also look at like, well, what's going to change? Like what are the additions? A Death Stranding to a Death Stranding 2, or Spider-Man to Spider-Man 2, or God of War to Ragnarok. Like we've had these, and it's not necessarily a negative. For Ghost, like Ghost of Tsushima is such a special game. And I mean, look, if you give me a new area and it looks more beautiful than Ghost of Tsushima, check, which it seems like I can already check that box, right? Everything we've seen looks amazing, sounds amazing. That's one I will check, right? All of these, like the lo-fi stuff and the extra blood stuff, honestly, a lot of it, I'm not actually I might experiment with it, but I don't actually plan on dedicating my life to it or anything. But okay, you have those are kind of visual or audio enhancements, let's say, right, that you could kind of turn on or off. You have new stuff in terms of the wolf that's kind of always around, always not around, depending on how you want to view it. You could have like the skill tree where you kind of bulk up the wolf and stuff, so that's a little bit fun on the gameplay side. I'm actually a really big fan of the stance thing that was going on in Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm actually kind of sad to see it leave with Yotei, but I mean, if you can capture the same general vibes, right? Different enemies require different, or they have different weaknesses, so you have different strengths, you can kind of go after them. In Tsushima, it was simply switching your stance depending on the enemy, and then if this is switching, your literal weapon, that's fine as well, right? Just kind of carry over that gameplay and add just a little bit to it. I think, and by the way, I think the firearms is doing that. I think the wolf is doing that. I think, again, swapping weapons instead of swapping stances and being able to lose weapons, things like that. Those are all, because you look at Tsushima and you say, or at least this is what I would say, Ghost of Tsushima has a pretty darn simplistic combat that just works within the first 5 seconds, and you can do it over and over and over. Yeah, there's enhancements, right? Like each stance has a couple things you can upgrade, and you're just getting more powerful, right? You're unlocking them, all this jazz. But I mean, at its core, what you're at, like parrying, blocking, dodging, and then striking, heavy and light attacks, right? And kind of chaining all these things together using the weapons or kind of your tool bag, right? It's not all that complex, but it works. Like I said, I joke 5 seconds. I mean, it works immediately. Immediately when you play Tsushima, it just feels smooth, and it feels like something that has a little bit of complexity, but not too much, and you can kind of immediately get into it. And I'm looking for that same thing, same thing for Yotei. Really what I'm looking for is a lot of the things that they've kind of promised / talked about, which is when you're doing this open world again, and I think this is actually maybe a bad thing when it comes to like playing Tsushima right before Yotei. There's a lot of positives. It reminded me how much I love the game. Okay, that's one, and it got me more excited for Yotei. But a thing that could be a negative is, okay, you're having this big open world, and you had a big open world in Tsushima. I've already done the fox dens like 80 times, okay? I've taken out bandit camps like 80 times. And again, this is where they've promised, like, there's just more stuff to do. And because there's more stuff to do, you do it less often. perfect. I have to see it in action, of course, to properly judge that and grade that. But I'm very glad they said it, because I will say it would probably hurt Yotei more than it should, because I'm going straight from Tsushima into Yotei, right? If I have to do another 80 fox dens, I'm gonna lose my freaking mind. Even though they're such cute creatures, I'm gonna lose my mind, right? So it's like I can't do that. And I mean, I don't know how many other people are playing one going into the other. It might not be as big of a deal if you haven't played the game in 5 years, but to me it matters, and that's what this video is about. So that's one thing. And then the main feature that could be a killer, it could be a strength, I've talked about this in several videos already, is that freaking story. It gets me worried, but also gets me excited, because I think Jin is such a, I think at the time he was a very underrated character. I don't know if you'd call him underrated now, because I just feel like everybody says that, so you can't really be underrated if everybody calls you underrated. You're not actually that anymore. But Jin is such a great character, and honestly, many of the characters in that game, like a Kenji, right, or a Yuna, like there's a lot of great side characters, there's a lot of great villains, there's villains with depth to it. And another part of it that I constantly am talking about, that story has some complexity to it. It has complexity through being simple. Like it's for a good amount of it, it's simply rescue your uncle, right, and then it's take back your castle. But as you're going, you're losing that samurai edge, and that honor is so freaking important in a good way. I mean, I say freaking, but it's such an important, like, you kind of just have to buy in to the system and to the belief that Ghost of Tsushima wants you to. And when you do that, like, it is deep. It is a more complex story, and it kind of does a different kind of story than I think most games are willing to try. And I highly, highly respect it for that. This game is a revenge story, so I really want them to add that complexity, because it's tough, because it's like, well, what do you expect? Like, if you're told it's a revenge story and then you want more, well, they are telling you what it is. But I will say they have hinted that it is going to be more than just a revenge story. It starts as purely revenge, and then it kind of evolves into a little bit more. So I want to know what that is, and I want to know, okay, can you make Atsu as good as Jin or better than Jin? These side characters, there are not just the characters, but how well written it is. Again, that's something that I think I specifically forgot about in Ghost of Tsushima. Number one, the arcs that a lot of these side characters, when you do like missions 1 through 9, they are really good. They are really, really good. And most of them are like pretty meaty. Like only a couple, if there's 9 missions, maybe 2 or 3 are kind of fluff type things. The rest of them are like head on, like there's some serious stuff going on. When you're doing like the music storyteller type stuff, or there's a lot to, or just side, like literal side missions, right? Like when something kind of random happens and you explore it for 10-15 minutes. There's a lot of really nicely written side things that happen in Tsushima. I want it all back, and that's the tough thing. It's like, well, you can just do it again, and that's kind of really what I'm asking for. Of course, they have to be different missions, and then you're rolling the dice of like, okay, are they as good of writers? Are they, can they do it twice in a row, have stories that are that good, both like main story and then also like the side stuff and even character specific stuff. So I am pumped. I really am. I think a lot of it does rest on how they do with the story and characters, but I'm really looking forward to just jumping back in, having some fun, with the gameplay, with the scenery, with the music, all that stuff. I feel like is going to be safely awesome. I think that's something you could safely say. It's going to be safely awesome. And then the rest of the stuff, yeah, it could kind of go either way, but I'm pumped. It's a really big game. I'm really, really excited for it, and kicks off October. Digimon, Battlefield, Little Nightmares, a lot of diverse games going on in October that I'm really excited for as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.